You people shouldn't complain about anything you get. Alicia Grant didn't whisper it. She spat the words across first class like a slap, loud enough for row 2 to freeze, row 3 to lift their phones, and a woman in 1A to stop breathing mid-sip. Dorian King didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the spoiled, foul-smelling meal placed in front of him. Then at the flight attendant who had just told him he didn't deserve basic respect. Alicia rolled her eyes, leaning in with a mocking smile. Eat what you're given, or don't eat at all. Simple. The cabin went silent. Passengers shifted. Phones tilted. Even the purser hesitated, afraid of confronting her, afraid of being recorded, afraid of losing his job. But Dorian, he just sat there, calm, listening, calculating, because Alicia thought she was scolding a powerless man who bought a seat he could barely afford. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know the spoiled food wasn't the real disaster. She didn't know the man she humiliated in front of the entire cabin owned the airline she worked for, and in less than 10 minutes, the skies she believed she ruled would fall completely out from under her. This is Hidden Black Echoes, where the stories of struggles are told, the rise and the voice of those the world tried to silence. If you believe no one deserves to be humiliated for speaking up, tap like, hit subscribe, because what's about to happen on this flight will expose a truth Alicia never saw coming, and a power Dorian never had to raise his voice to reveal. The smell hit him first. Sour, metallic, wrong. Dorian King lifted the lid of his first-class meal and instinctively pulled it back. The chicken was gray. The sauce had separated. Steam carried a stench that didn't belong anywhere on a luxury international flight. He blinked once, steady, calm. Across the aisle, a flight attendant snapped gum between her teeth. Alicia Grant, sharp uniform, sharper attitude, strutted past him, dragging the service cart like it offended her. "Excuse me," Dorian said gently, raising a hand. "I think this meal may be spoiled." Alicia rolled her eyes so hard the passengers in row 2 saw it. "Sir," she said loudly. Too loudly. "Nothing is wrong with the meal. Eat it." Dorian kept his expression neutral. "Ma'am, I'm not trying to complain. I'm just saying the smell." That was when she snapped. "You people shouldn't complain about anything you get." Alicia leaned closer, voice dripping with condescension. "I've been doing this job for 10 years. I know when food is bad. This is perfectly fine. Don't make trouble." Phones started lifting. Passengers angled cameras discreetly. The flight was too quiet now. Even the air hummed differently. The head purser, a balding man with stiff shoulders, glanced over. He hesitated, then looked away, pretending to fuss with safety paperwork. He knew Alicia's patterns. He always looked away. Dorian folded the tray table up. "May I please speak with the purser?" Alicia let out a sharp laugh. "You think you're entitled to that?" No one missed the way she emphasized entitled. A man in row 3 muttered, "Wow." Another whispered, "Is she serious?" Alicia tilted her chin high. "I've seen this 100 times. Someone buys an upgrade they can barely afford and thinks they can boss us around. You're not special." Still, Dorian didn't argue. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the silence, the breathing of passengers, the vibrations beneath the floor. He looked like a man calculating something far beyond what anyone in that cabin could understand. "I'm only asking for a replacement meal," he said softly. Alicia slapped her palm on the headrest. "I said no." Then louder, for everyone to hear. "Eat what you're given or don't eat at all. Simple." A woman in row 1 gasped. A man whispered, "This is going on TikTok." The purser finally approached, forced smile plastered on. "Sir, is there a problem?" Alicia jumped in front of him. "He's causing trouble, complaining over nothing, trying to stir the cabin." Dorian shook his head calmly. "I only said the food smelled off. That's all." The purser stiffened. He was afraid, not of Dorian, but of confrontation. He cleared his throat. "Alicia handles catering issues. Whatever she says stands." Alicia smirked triumphantly, folding her arms. Dorian sat back slowly, hands clasped in his lap. His voice lowered, calm, measured, dangerous in how quiet it was. "Is this the service you provide to all your passengers?" Alicia leaned forward, her shadow falling across him. "Only the ones who complain." Someone recorded that sentence in perfect HD. Dorian exhaled softly. Not angry. Not shaken. Just observing. He wasn't dressed like money. Simple hoodie, worn jeans, plain sneakers. No one in that cabin had any idea they were speaking to Dorian King. Billionaire, owner of a global transportation conglomerate, majority shareholder of the airline they were sitting on. To them, he was just another black man they assumed had no power. Alicia snatched the spoiled meal off his tray. "Since you don't like it, you get nothing. And don't call me again unless it's an emergency." She stormed away. A hush fell over the cabin. The woman in 1A leaned forward. "Sir, I'm so sorry you're experiencing this." Dorian gave her a gentle nod. "Thank you." The teenage boy across the aisle mouthed. "That was messed up." Dorian tapped one finger on the armrest. Once. Twice. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim black phone, the kind reserved for senior-level executives. Alicia didn't see it. The purser didn't notice. But the passengers did. Dorian lifted the phone, pressed one button, and spoke in a low tone. "This is King. I need to report an incident." Several heads snapped toward him. "King? King!" Alicia kept walking, oblivious. Dorian's eyes narrowed just slightly. 10 minutes later, the entire flight crew would learn the truth. They hadn't humiliated a powerless passenger. They had humiliated the man who owned the skies they were flying through. Alicia returned like a storm, rehearsing its own thunder. She didn't even pretend to smile. She stopped beside Dorian's seat, crossed her arms, and spoke loudly enough for rows 5 and 6 to hear. "Sir, the captain has been notified that you're causing issues. One more complaint, and we'll have to downgrade you to economy." Gasps rippled across the aisle, but Alicia kept going as if humiliation were oxygen. Dorian looked up slowly, expression unreadable. "I haven't raised my voice. I haven't disrespected anyone. I asked for safe food. That's all." Alicia scoffed and leaned closer, her badge nearly brushing his shoulder. "And I said you people always exaggerate. If you can't behave like a first-class guest, you don't deserve to sit here." Her voice dripped with contempt, and the words, "you people," landed harder than a slap. The purser approached again, shoulders tight. He didn't look Dorian in the eyes. "Sir, the crew is expressing concern that you're agitated. We need full cooperation." Dorian blinked once in disbelief. "I haven't been anything but cooperative." Alicia cut him off with a fake laugh. "Oh, please, don't act innocent now. You've been rude since you boarded. He's been sighing, rolling his eyes, questioning everything." Her lies came out smooth, practiced, almost rehearsed. A woman in the next row whispered, "That's not true. He hasn't done any of that." But Alicia ignored her, raising her voice even further. "For the record, if you continue this behavior, we can restrain you under aviation policy." Phones lifted again. Every passenger heard the threat. Alicia smiled at the cameras, confident, smug, certain she was untouchable. The second flight attendant, a young man named Mark, slipped over with a tray of water. He glanced around nervously before placing a cup on Dorian's armrest. Then he whispered just loud enough for only Dorian to hear. "I'm really sorry. She shouldn't talk to you like that. But this Root, she gets away with everything. People have complained before." His voice shook. "No one ever does anything." Alicia snapped her fingers at Mark. "Stop coddling him and get back to service." Mark flinched, then stepped away, shoulders hunched. Alicia turned back to Dorian and slapped a form onto his tray table. "Sign this, acknowledging that you've been warned about disruptive behavior." Dorian didn't touch it. He simply studied her with unsettling patience. "I won't sign a lie." Alicia planted her hands on her hips, voice rising. "Refusal noted. I'll inform the captain that you're becoming hostile." The passengers murmured now, quiet but furious. He hasn't done anything. Why is she acting like this? This is discrimination. Alicia shot a glare at the cabin. "Mind your own business." A couple in 1A exchanged uneasy looks. The businessman in 2B shook his head in disgust. And still, Dorian didn't react. He didn't defend himself. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even frown. He simply observed every word, every insult, every false accusation, storing it in a calm silence that felt more dangerous than anger. Alicia mistook his composure for weakness. She leaned down, smirking. "You think staying quiet makes you look innocent? It just makes you look guilty." Her breath hovered inches from his ear. "By the time we land, everyone will know you're nothing but a problem passenger." Dorian finally turned his head. Not quickly, not angrily. Slowly. Controlled. And Alicia stepped back without meaning to. "Are you finished?" he asked quietly. Alicia opened her mouth, ready to spit something venomous, but the purser cut in, desperate to reassert authority. "Sir, please just cooperate. You're making our jobs difficult." Dorian didn't look at him. He folded his hands neatly in his lap. "I've done nothing but cooperate." Alicia huffed dramatically and snatched the untouched form off the tray. "Fine, I'll file the report myself." Mark returned with a napkin, pretending to tidy the area, but whispered, "Please, just hang on. Something's about to happen." He stepped away before Alicia noticed. Passengers leaned closer to one another, whispering, "He's so calm. That woman is out of control. He should sue. Why won't the purser stop her? Who even talks like that in first class?" But Dorian didn't speak, didn't move, didn't react. Only his eyes changed, sharpening, narrowing, calculating, because Alicia thought she had silenced him. But she didn't know. 10 minutes ago, when he pressed that black phone, he wasn't calling customer service. He wasn't calling corporate. He wasn't calling the captain. He was calling the only department that had the authority to override an entire flight crew, the Executive Operations Division, the unit that reported directly to him. The man she thought was powerless, the man she told to eat it, the man she insulted for being you people, the man sitting quietly in seat 1C, owned the airline she worked for, and her fate was already in motion. If this moment has you glued in, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because the calm you're watching right now is seconds away from becoming the turning point. No one on this flight will ever forget. Alicia strutted down the aisle like she'd already won a battle no one else agreed was happening. She stopped beside Dorian again and snapped, "If you're done pretending to be important, I'll gladly notify the captain you're becoming a threat." Her tone dripped with arrogance, confidence built on the belief that he couldn't touch her. Dorian lifted his eyes, calm as ever. Then call him, he said quietly. Alicia blinked, surprised he didn't sound afraid. Better yet, Dorian added, reaching into his pocket. I'll call him myself. A few passengers murmured. Alicia burst out laughing. You think the captain is going to talk to you? Sir, sit back, eat your food, and stop imagining you matter. But Dorian had already raised the sleek black phone to his ear. His voice stayed low, controlled. It's Dorian. I need the captain at my seat. Alicia rolled her eyes so hard the passengers saw it. Sure you do, she snickered. And I need a mansion in Malibu. She turned to the purser. This is what I mean. Delusional, making demands. Passengers leaned in now, sensing something shifting. The air felt tight, charged. Then, less than 2 minutes later, the cockpit door unlocked with a sharp metallic click. The captain stepped out, stiff, pale, beads of sweat already forming at his temple. Alicia's smirk faltered. He didn't walk. He hurried, straight to Dorian's seat. Mr. King, the captain breathed, voice trembling. Sir, I wasn't informed you were on board. The entire cabin froze. A phone dropped somewhere behind row 2. The purser's jaw fell open. Alicia stared at the captain as if he'd spoken in another language. Mr. Who? She asked, confused. The captain swallowed hard. Mr. Dorian King, he repeated, owner of K International Holdings, parent company of this airline. Alicia's face drained of color. Even the purser stumbled backward. Passengers whispered in shock. Some in disbelief, some in awe, some recording every second. Dorian didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply met the captain's eyes and said, "Thank you for coming." He gestured lightly toward Alicia. "Your crew seems uninformed." The captain turned slowly, eyes burning into Alicia with rage he struggled to contain. "Miss Grant," he said tightly, "did you verbally threaten and insult Mr. King?" Alicia shook her head violently. No, he was difficult. He refused to eat his meal. He... The captain cut her off. His meal was spoiled. A passenger raised their hand. We all heard her insult him. It was bad. Another leaned in. She threatened to downgrade him for no reason. A third added, "She said, you people shouldn't complain. I recorded it." Alicia spun towards the passengers in desperation. "Stop lying! You're all twisting things!" But no one believed her anymore. The purser stepped forward, voice shaking. "Sir, I didn't know it was you. If I had..." Dorian raised a hand slightly. "That's the problem." Silence. He continued. "Respect shouldn't depend on knowing someone's bank account." The words hit harder than any insult Alicia had thrown. The captain bowed his head slightly. "Mr. King, I sincerely apologize on behalf of the crew." Dorian nodded once. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for accountability." Alicia trembled now, her earlier arrogance gone. "Sir, please, I was just following protocol." "Protocol?" Dorian repeated, eyes narrowing. "Is racism airline protocol?" She shook her head rapidly, breathing uneven. No, sir, I didn't..." But the captain already knew there was no recovery. "Miss Grant," he said coldly, "consider yourself relieved of duty. You will remain seated for the rest of the flight." Her mouth fell open. "You can't. I can," the captain snapped. "And I will." The purser stood beside her, hesitating. Then he removed her badge and nameplate from her uniform. The humiliation was complete, but the consequences were only beginning. Passengers stared, whispering, filming the moment Alicia's career collapsed mid-air. Dorian looked at the captain again. "Please return to the cockpit. I can handle the rest from here." The captain nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." When he walked away, Alicia slumped into an empty seat, silent, stunned, stripped of power. Dorian leaned back, finally taking a slow breath. The balance of power had shifted entirely. The crew wasn't in control anymore. The cabin wasn't in chaos anymore, and Alicia finally understood. The quiet man she told to eat it was the most powerful person on the plane. The cabin stayed strangely quiet after the captain returned to the cockpit. Not peaceful quiet, the tense, electric kind people feel right before truth is exposed. Alicia sat stiffly in the corner seat the captain forced her into, hands trembling, but still trying to look offended rather than afraid. Her eyes darted around, trying to find someone, anyone, who would defend her. No one moved. Dorian unbuckled his seatbelt slowly, his calmness unnerving the crew more than shouting ever could. He stood, turned toward the rows behind him, and spoke with a soft but authoritative tone. "If any passengers were mistreated," he said, "I'd like to hear it directly. No pressure, but this is your moment to be heard." A man in business attire raised his hand immediately. "She insulted me on last month's flight," he said. "Told me I should be grateful for even being allowed in first class." A woman 2 rows back leaned forward. "She yelled at an elderly man on my flight. He barely spoke English. She humiliated him." A younger guy lifted his phone. "I've got footage," he said, "from today and from a previous flight. She's been at this for a while." The purser swallowed hard, sweat beading at his hairline. "Mr. King, I wasn't aware of—" "Don't lie," another passenger interrupted sharply. "I complained to you last month. You dismissed me." Someone else chimed in. "He shrugged when I reported her. Said if I didn't like it, I could book a different airline." The purser's face crumpled. His excuses died on his lips. Dorian nodded slowly, absorbing every detail, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to raise his voice. He just listened, and that terrified the crew more than any confrontation could. Then he turned to the passenger beside him, a soft-spoken older woman clutching a rosary. "Ma'am," he said gently, "did something happen on this flight?" She hesitated, then whispered, "She switched my meal with someone else's. I didn't complain, because I was afraid she'd retaliate." Alicia snapped from her corner. "Oh, please." "You people always exaggerate." The cabin gasped. Dorian turned his head toward her with only a fraction of movement. One look. Alicia immediately closed her mouth, her breath hitching. Dorian continued. "Did anyone else receive spoiled food?" Several hands went up at once. "Mine smelled bad too. She said I was being dramatic," one passenger said. Another added, "She told me minorities complain the most about food. I didn't want trouble, so I said nothing, but it was definitely spoiled." Dorian nodded. "Thank you for speaking up." Then he looked at the purser. "Spoiled food is a health risk. That doesn't happen without negligence." The purser stammered, I wasn't aware the storage unit was malfunctioning." A passenger fired back instantly. "I overheard you telling her earlier to just serve it anyway, so the crew wouldn't get blamed." Alicia flinched. The purser turned away, face white. Hands kept rising, voices strengthening as people realized they were finally safe to speak. Every story layered over the last, humiliation, insults, threats, dismissals, racial remarks whispered or spoken loudly, depending on her mood. It painted one picture, a pattern of cruelty protected by silence. Alicia tried one last attempt to salvage her pride. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed. "He's manipulating all of you. I've been flying for 10 years. I know how to treat passengers. He's just—" She gestured toward Dorian with contempt, "trying to make an example out of me." Dorian stepped closer. Calm, controlled, The entire aircraft seemed to hold its breath. "Miss Grant," he said softly, "do you know my name?" She rolled her eyes again, though her voice shook slightly. "You're some guy with money, I guess?" Passengers exchanged looks. Some even leaned forward, anticipating the final blow. Dorian's voice remained low, steady enough to send a shiver through the cabin. "I am Dorian King." Alicia blinked rapidly, confusion flickering. "And?" "I own K International," he continued, "the parent company of this airline, and 15 others worldwide." The words hit her like a physical impact. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her spine stiffened, her breath caught. For the first time the entire flight, she truly froze. And then, slowly, she collapsed back into the seat, legs shaking, eyes glazed in disbelief. The purser sank down beside her, defeated. A wave of murmurs swept through the cabin. Shock, vindication, awe. Dorian looked around, meeting the eyes of every passenger who had spoken. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Your voices matter." There was no yelling, no grand speech, just truth and consequences. And with the investigation complete, the final reckoning was waiting at 30,000 feet. The wheels hit the runway with a heavy thud, and for a moment the entire cabin exhaled, as if the plane itself had been holding its breath. But the tension didn't fade. It sharpened. Everyone knew what was coming. Alicia sat rigid in her jump seat, face drained of color, hands shaking uncontrollably. The purser stared ahead, lips pressed so tightly they turned white. The remaining attendants avoided Dorian's eyes entirely, suddenly aware that silence had never been protection at all. It had been complicity. As the aircraft rolled toward the gate, Dorian rose from his seat. His calmness terrified the crew more than anger ever could. Passengers whispered excitedly, watching him with a mix of gratitude and awe. Some had their cameras out, not for drama but for justice, living proof that someone powerful was finally on their side. The plane stopped. The seatbelt sign went off. And the door opened. Waiting on the jet bridge was a full corporate delegation, suits, badges, and the airline's regional director, all standing stiffly with tablets in hand. Word had traveled fast. Dorian's single phone call had shaken the entire headquarters into motion. The purser's knees nearly buckled. Alicia whispered, No, this can't be happening." But it was. The regional director stepped aboard, bowed respectfully to Dorian, then turned to the crew with a stony expression. "Per Mr. King's report," he announced, "this cabin is now under full corporate review. All involved staff will exit the aircraft immediately." Alicia shot to her feet. "Wait, I was provoked. He was looking for trouble." Dorian's voice cut through her excuses like steel. "I was looking for dinner," he said. "You served discrimination instead." Passengers applauded, not loud, but sharp, unified, righteous. The director continued, "Alicia Grant, you are hereby terminated for misconduct, discriminatory behavior, endangering passenger safety, and violation of service protocols." Alicia's mouth fell open. Her voice sputtered into nothing. The purser stepped forward desperately. "Sir, please, I was only following—" "You were covering," Dorian said evenly, "and you allowed spoiled food to be served on a full flight. That alone puts lives at risk." The director nodded. "Marcus Hill, you are terminated effective immediately." The purser slumped, defeated. 2 additional attendants were called out. Those who had backed Alicia rolled their eyes at complaints, dismissed passenger concerns. "You are all removed from duty," the director said. "Security will escort you out." Alicia's eyes darted around wildly, searching for sympathy. None came. Not one passenger. Not one colleague. Not one soul. She stumbled off the plane, surrounded by security, past the cameras held by delighted passengers capturing poetic justice in real time. Once the crew was gone, the cabin felt lighter, like a storm had finally passed. Dorian faced the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said gently, "on behalf of the airline, I'm sorry for what you endured. This is not who we are. It will not happen again." A woman in the front row wiped away tears. "Thank you," she whispered. A man beside her nodded. "No CEO has ever cared this much." Dorian continued, "Every passenger on this flight will receive a full refund and a complimentary upgrade on your next trip." Gasps, applause, relief. "And," he added softly, "you will all be contacted to participate in a new passenger rights oversight program. Your voices will shape what comes next." The cabin erupted. Cheers, grateful laughter, applause that echoed through the jet bridge. People stood to shake his hand. Some hugged him. A few simply placed a hand over their heart because words weren't enough. As Dorian stepped off the plane, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Airport staff whispered in shock. But he didn't pose. He didn't grandstand. He didn't speak to the cameras at all. He simply walked down the jet bridge, quiet, decisive, powerful, flanked by the passengers whose dignity he had just restored. Behind him, one voice rose above the rest. A little girl who had watched everything unfold. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Thank you, Mr. King!" People cheered again. Dorian didn't turn back. He only smiled as he walked into the terminal, a man who didn't need applause to know he'd done the right thing, and one who was about to change the entire airline industry forever. If this story reminded you that silence isn't weakness, and dignity doesn't depend on uniforms, titles, or power, hit like and subscribe for more stories where arrogance collapses, truth rises, and quiet strength gets the justice it deserves.